Okay, I'll call the Willington Board of Education Policy Committee to order. It is April 4th, 2022. It is 7:04 p.m. We have Herb here, and this is obviously a virtual meeting. We have Herb and Brianna, and I know Anne's on her way. We also have HMS Principal Mary Kay Deshawness and some guests. We have a relatively easy agenda, I think, tonight for policy review. We have dress code. We have one final look at the child abuse reporting. And then we have a physical restraint policy. So those are our three policies tonight, and adjournment. So should be relatively quick because there's not a lot of change in those. Here comes Ann now. So the first item tonight is our dress code policy. And we actually have quite a group of students here that's on from our leadership committee at HMS. And they're going to give us a little background first on their review, and they actually have a draft policy that they created for the board. And so I will, Mary Kay, I have do you want to bring everybody in first? Or are you okay? I can share the PowerPoint.
Yeah, that would be great. So I'm really pleased that we have a leadership committee at Home Memorial. And just so that you understand, the leadership committee was nominated by teachers last year, mainly to be ambassadors for the school. They're the children and students that we look to who uphold the core values and who could be seen as positive role models. Because I have come from a place of student voice and choice, I met with them very early in the school year to discuss the dress code, because I recognized that the dress code had caused a tremendous amount of stress in years prior. And so we began working together to take a look at the dress code. So the student leaders that I have here tonight, some of them all of them were at the meetings that we held. Some of them were prepared to present, but we do have members here that are just simply here to be part of the meeting. I have Max Ganaris, Ethan Bryant, and Paul and Eric Mercier here, who have been assigned specific slides, who will speak to you about specific things. But we do have quite a number of students on the leadership committee that their names are listed at the end of the slide presentation. Just for purposes of clarity, I did include 7th and 8th grade students, and I did not include 5th and 6th grade students in the conversation because according to the data that I had collected, this dress code more specifically affected students in 7th and 8th grade. And I felt that they could speak to their experience with more background than the 5th and 6th grade students. Phil, if you wouldn't mind sharing your screen, then we can do the PowerPoint. Okay. Next slide. Okay. Who is the student who was going to do this slide?
It's Eric.
Okay, go ahead, Eric.
So during the process of making this new policy, the student leadership committee met throughout the school year during lunch periods. We identified the purposes of having a dress code in our school. We read through the current HMS dress code policy to identify the sections to include. We identified the sections in our current dress code that were outdated, biased, or subjective. We read and discussed approved dress code policies from other Connecticut schools, and then we drafted language that was fitting and appropriate for the Willington Public Schools.
So this took place during lunchtime, and we had like an easel board, and we did some brainstorming around what a dress code is for, why we're even doing that. So the next one is the purpose.
So the dress code serves many purposes. A school to provide guidance to students and parents as to appropriate attire for school or school functions. Also to promote learning, safety, and a positive climate. to create an environment similar to that of a workplace and to reflect a level of respect for oneself, one's peers, and one's school.
The current JHMS dress code has many problems that should be addressed. One, it was adopted in 2010, and as a result, it contains obsolete or outdated articles of clothing, guidelines, and rules, which are completely irrelevant nowadays, some of them. Two, contains rules that are specific to one gender, which not only isn't right, but isn't necessary either. Three, contains subjective language like modesty and good taste, which lack concrete meanings and make the dress code quite vague in some spots. Four, contains prohibitive language like you may not wear and you cannot wear, which could make a student feel restrained or restricted from being who they are in school.
You may be asking why we even have a revised dress code. A couple of reasons to name are we wanted to remove the language that would be gender specific. We wanted to promote a positive educational environment that prepared students for the workplace. We also wanted to properly reflect items available to parents and students in clothing stores to promote safety, security, and respect in the school environment. And last but not least, to use language that is inclusive and positive, not prohibitive, like previously.
We linked the dress code in here, and I know that many of you have, I believe that you all have received a copy of our draft policy. To be clear, we, when we chose the language for this dress code, we had specific guidelines that we wanted to follow, but we wanted also to use approved language that had been found in other policies. We also wanted to be sure that it took away the shame. And that's a big piece of dress code. And that was a big piece that many students talked about. The members of our leadership committee are listed in the next slide. They are 7th and 8th grade leaders, and the ones with the asterisk next to the names are the students who spoke this evening. However, the students who were on this slide contributed to the dress code draft that Phil will share. And obviously questions.
Let's pull up the policy. And thank you folks for attending tonight and sharing and taking the time to go through this. The idea here, and this used to say Hall Memorial School, and this policy has been shared with the elementary school. I think obviously most of you know that for the most part, dress code policies impact middle schools and high schools the most. Typically, you don't see as many issues in the elementary school. However, what they've done here is they've created a policy that can be applied. The idea here is that this would be applied as our district policy. And typically when you see a policy rewritten, you would see crossouts and you know, new language. They started from scratch. So this would be a brand new policy to replace the current dress code policy that you have in place. Do you all want to highlight anything, any of the students that are on the Zoom, or Mary Kay, do you want to highlight anything specific that is in here on the policy?
I'll let the students weigh in. I know that they all had a lot to say, and I'd like them to be able to speak to anything that they chose to highlight.
You're asking us, Phil?
No, I want to hear if the students want to highlight anything first, and then I'll let the board members can ask questions, just in case they wanted to add something to what is here. Any students want to speak? No pressure.
I will say that, you know, obviously since 2010, much has changed in our world, not the least of which is what is available in the retail stores for people to buy. in terms of, I know it was a big deal about the length of a pair of shorts or the straps on a shirt. And we found that many of the dress code policy regulations applied to females. We wanted to make this as gender neutral as possible because in our world, there are many things are changing. And we also, as I mentioned, we are attempting to frame the dress code with positive language instead of prohibitive language, because it's far easier to let a student know what they can wear than to be authoritarian and say what they cannot wear. And when students get into the workplace, their work environments are going to require them to abide by a certain dress code. And that is one of the things that we wanted to prepare them for as well.
So this policy is their recommendation. And I will be honest with you. I brought this straight to you as it was. The only thing that I had changed was this Willington Public Schools. It used to say Hall Memorial, and that's the way it was sent out to you. Was I thought it was important for you to see the work that they've done, and then have some conversation around the work and allow the board to ask questions. And obviously, this is your first read at it, so it's not this doesn't need to be a direct send to the full board, but it's a chance for you to ask students or Mary Kay any questions that about the development or what they've put in here. So any board members have questions about any of the specific language that you see in the policy?
Well, Phil, is it okay if I say a few words?
Yeah, definitely.
Well, it seemed to be a very thoughtful document. It's well put together, and this is, as you say, it's my first reading of the document itself, and I skimmed through it just a little while ago because my printer wasn't working during the day. But on number 4, 5, and 6, I have a few questions, or just for discussion purposes.
Sure.
One is 4, which deals with comfortable clothing and so forth that expresses their identity. I don't know what that means, and or religious beliefs.
So specifically, I think in that case, we were looking at religious headwear, for example. We don't have anybody at this point. However, headwear tends to be not permitted in schools, specifically head coverings. So say, for example, if somebody was going to be wearing a hijab, we would want them to be able to express their religious beliefs without being quote unquote dress coded or called out for dressing that way. Expressing your identity just means expressing your individuality. Whoever, I mean, especially in our school, we find that how you dress kind of expresses who you are, and that should be celebrated, and within the confines of this policy should be permitted.
Okay, thank you. On 5, it looks like there's a list of things that are not appropriate, including profanity and criminal activity, things of that kind, pornography. Let's see, like weapons. I know this is probably directed at rifles, pistols, and revolvers, bullets, that type of thing. But suppose someone wanted to have something that was patriotic, with a flag and a revolutionary rifle or something that depicting, the Revolutionary War, and kind of it's done on, say, Patriots Day or something like that. That would not be appropriate according to this policy.
Well, I mean, I do understand where you're coming from. I have seen shirts that have, like, say, for example, a musket on it, or an old, like a John Tremaine type, for lack of a better descriptor, as a patriotic emblem, that tends to be less of an issue than perhaps an AK-47. So I think, I mean, obviously that we have to have a little bit of, you know, judgment around that as an administrator. If I saw a kid that said, you know, 1776 and had a musket on it, it would be different than an assault rifle.
How about if someone came in, they had NRA on their jersey or T-shirt? Would that be, that would be offensive to some people, but not to others?
I mean, I think, again, that's very subjective. We've had a lot of situations around those types of political things. For example, a student could wear a shirt that said Black Lives Matter. That's what they believe in and that's what they support. And as long as it doesn't degrade another group, then that's typically okay. You know, around the politics we had Trump 2020. You can support who you choose to support, but if you degrade the other candidate, that's when there's more of an issue.
On number 6, equity in dress. I don't understand that section. I understand why it's in there, but would that mean that someone could not put something on their jersey or put something, you know, dealing with equity or sexual orientation or something like that? Would that be appropriate, or how would?
I'm not sure what you're asking.
Well, if someone has a jersey and they put down their sexual orientation on their jersey, is that acceptable?
I have to say I've never seen that. I mean, if somebody is a member of the GSA, for example, and they have a rainbow on their shirt and they say, you know, love is love, that's what we're talking about. I mean, people don't tend to wear clothes that say like, I am a girl or I am a boy. You know, we have kids who may dress, who say, for example, a male who may identify differently as a female or not even, maybe they're trans. They may start to wear more feminine clothing. They should not be dress coded for choosing to wear those types of those pieces of clothing.
I think the idea behind that, Herb, is that they're treated equal based upon any of those items that are listed there. That's the idea behind it.
Yeah.
And did you have a question about that?
It's not so much a question as a comment, but I just really want to thank the students for honoring individual differences and realizing that that's really important, that students be able to express their individuality as long as it's within the norms. And also I appreciate that they recognize that it was important to be sensitive not only to yourself, but your peers and the staff and the school environment. I think it's excellent that they included that. And then also I really appreciate prohibiting offensive images and language. So thank you for the whole thing is excellent, but I really appreciated those 3 points.
Yeah, I think most students probably would go along with the code, because there is quite a bit of leeway throughout this document, the way I see it, and it suits everyone's purpose. And even if everyone comes in and dresses differently, as long as they adhere to the code, dress code, then they're okay. Now, if someone does not adhere to the dress code, what is the procedure in that respect?
That's a good question.
picks up on it and say you're wearing something appropriate, and the student says, well, I don't think it is. I think it's okay. Then there's an issue there. Who decides?
So, it's interesting because usually it's a conversation that has to be had. And as an administrator in the middle school, those conversations have to happen privately and respectfully. I try to, as the principal, understand where the student is coming from. There are certain things that were not permitted when I was in school, so I sometimes have to check what decade I'm in because I've been in this business a very long time. But it's a private conversation. Sometimes we talk about, what the dress code actually says, what their interpretation of it is. And then if the piece of clothing is that egregious, which typically it isn't, I will have an option for the student to change into, or I will say to that student, you're wearing this piece of clothing today. We know that it doesn't abide by the dress code. So I do not want to see it again. Please don't wear it again to school. If it does arrive at school again, I always will contact the parent and let the parent know that we've had this conversation. If it occurs again, then then it's a quicker response and it's we've talked about this already. What is the purpose behind? Because usually it's some sort of message, something that they want people to see or understand. And usually that's all it really takes. I know that there are some schools that go so far as to have a big orange dress code T-shirt that says, I've been dress coded, and I want to remove that shame. There's no need for that. We also know that 9 times out of 10, a heavier set person is more likely to be, dress coded than somebody who is within the typical range. So we want to be sure that there's no shaming involved, no body shaming, or no, that's just not okay. It's more of a restorative approach of, okay, so this is your choice. Why did you make this choice? And then how are we going to make a better choice the next time?
So you just work it out with the student, but you're not going to send the student home.
No,
anything like that.
I've never had to do that in all of my years. No.
Yeah.
Brianna?
Hi. Great job, everybody. Thank you for spending time on this, dear ambassadors, because clearly it needed some updating if it's been this way since 2010. Were you even born then, some of you? So I wanted to ask a couple of questions. Just looking at number 5, it says using the word offensive, and there are examples. And you were just explaining how if someone is offended, it offers a great opportunity for conversation, and that you would have those private and respectful conversations with the students wearing the clothing item. What does a student do if they feel offended by something a classmate has on? Recognizing that we live in a wonderful country where freedoms are available to us. What should a student do?
Typically what students do is they just reach out to me and they let me know. They let me know immediately, usually, or they'll tell their teacher and their teacher will tell me. But the communication in the school is pretty good. They know where to find me. They know how to get in touch with me, and they make it clear that I need to, Mrs. Tashanis, I need you to handle this. So usually it's very quick. And any of the students that are here can weigh in if they know of anything differently.
Sure, of course, yeah. I think that seems like a good opportunity for conversation too, about living in a world where things might be different from your own beliefs and ideas, and sort of having empathy for one another, but still creating a commonly respectful environment, which can be tricky sometimes, even in a workplace as a grown-up. Thanks. The other thing, I just wanted to make sure, of course, it's known that the policy is applicable to all school functions, including musical events, field trips, dances, and sporting events. Do we need to specify that within the policy? Does it say that?
It doesn't say that, but that is certainly a great suggestion. I do know at the end, we did put a clause in about specific, like concerts, for example. I know Mr. Phillips and Mrs. Canestrari have a specific type of clothing that they want the kids to wear. I know that for this particular leadership group, when we ushered for graduation, I had specific, not requirements, but requests for them of what to wear. So this dress code can be superseded by an event of any nature, but it would not be a bad idea to put in a clause that this applies to all of the things that you had said.
Okay, great. And then I was reading number 7 and wondered if you or one of your students could explain that one a little bit further. It was the one about video camera security, being on security, and the video equipment in case of emergencies. What was the idea there?
Do any of the students who are on here want to speak to that, or did you want me to?
Well, that's kind of with the no hoods, because the security cameras can't identify you when you have the hood on. So using that.
Okay, so being mindful of facial recognition.
Right. That also speaks to sunglasses, because those are not allowed in the building. That kids can wear them outside, but hoods and sunglasses and anything that obscures your face doesn't work for us, because our video equipment cannot often recognize.
Okay, and where did hats fall?
So
Along
we
those
had
lines.
hats in the students may wear, but we have it that they cannot obstruct your eyes. So we have kids right now that are wearing hats either higher on their head or backwards, so that they have a hat on, but you have to see your eyes. And especially right now, we're struggling. We are not, but the world is struggling with connections. And in order to really connect with somebody, you need to see their face, their eyes, and now that we don't have masks, we're actually even better suited to do that.
Yes, I was thinking about the masks and how that was causing a problem anyway, sort of with that kind of thing. I love the idea of seeing the eyes. You're right. That's very important. Thank you all for answering those questions.
Make a suggestion based upon what Brianna just asked for number 7. And just to suggest to change that to say, which includes the ability of school community members to identify a student using video equipment. Do you need the or in case of emergencies?
I don't think so. I mean, again, we took many of these clauses and phrases from other policies. In case of emergencies is not necessary, because we can probably fulfill what we need to fulfill without those words. If you
That
would.
part, those words there in the description made me think about, like, if you were trying to find a student who was outside in a group of kids or looking for a certain someone, you would need to be able to perhaps describe what they were wearing. So that's what came to mind, but I think maybe that's not go with us.
Yeah, or put a comma there to separate it out, right?
Yeah.
I think is it twofold? So one is the ability for school community members to identify a student using our security system, right? That's number 1. And then number 2 is in case of emergency. I'm looking for someone with a blue sweatshirt, and the idea here is that you can find them.
Yeah.
But I'm not so sure linked to this portion that it's needed.
One other point there would be the child's ability to see where they're going. If they had on something that obstructed their vision, that would have affect their safety as well as that of the other students.
Yeah.
Say there's a fire drill and someone can't see and they trip, and it could be interpreted that way.
Yeah, I think I take that out. I think I take this piece out, the in case of emergencies. I'm just curious to know, and I think that was Ethan that was speaking before. Ethan, do you, if that was you, do you see that, or in case of emergencies being necessary there, or do you see it as a separate item that needs to be put someplace else or restated?
Yeah, I think that would be separate.
Separate. How would you say it? So is the point here, and I'm just trying to go back to what the statement is here. So the district's dress code and believes that the dress code should accomplish the following goals. What would the goal of the in case of emergencies be? How do you see that?
So like if in case of emergencies, something that a student would be wearing that would make it so they wouldn't be able to get out of the building properly, or like maybe hear their teacher if they needed to leave.
I missed the end of that. Say that again, Ethan, for me.
Like if they needed to hear to leave the building, like something that could obstruct their hearing.
Gotcha.
They could also trip if they had something that was too long or something like that.
Is there
So-
a part where it says something about safety? I thought I read there was a piece about it.
Yeah, it's in that same one, and that's what I'm curious if it will, if it's in that portion, right? So ensure that safety and security of students and staff are upheld. So the safety portion is, I think that could be in an emergency. It could be anytime, right? If the principal says, look at the sweatshirt you're wearing is what do you call those snuggie things? And there's potential for someone to trip on something like that going down the stairs. She's going to make a decision based upon the safety of the student in that situation, right? Whereas the security portion is the second portion, which includes the ability to identify a student using video equipment. So I think now, based upon what Ethan just said, if it's the safety portion, so we can identify you, or we can make sure we need to, if you need to hear or you need to be able to travel safely, I think it's taken care of in the start of that one. I'm not sure what the board members think of about that, but. So maybe MK, I'm going to make a suggestion. Sorry.
Can I say one more word?
Yeah, Herb, give me 1 second. MK, my suggestion here would be, and we'll see what Herb says. But I think my suggestion would be to take that one back to your full committee, just to see if there's any clarification, because they're not all here, right? They're,
Yep.
I'm asking one student. I think the majority of this is very well written. And Brianna's question for 7 was exactly mine. That was the only one I had a question about. But did
Okay.
they want to clarify or split that apart to clean that up? Sorry,
Sure.
Herb. Go ahead.
Phil, I agree with you. I like the document, and it gives the students guidelines really addressing. Some of them may not have been aware of some of these things that are in here, and it does help them a lot. And I think the youngsters that prepared this with the help of their advisors and so forth did a good job. I do have one more question though. It's the second to last paragraph, which deals with students who represent the school district in a voluntary activity, which would be a club or athletics, I suppose, something like that, may be required to conform to dress established by the organizer of the activity and approved by the principal. Students are notified these requirements prior to events, and it may be denied the opportunity to participate. Is this kind of an open-ended type of thing, so that anything is not covered in the document? In this instance, you could have something that is used.
I think, Herb, I think there's 2 points here. One is the example of, you know, a musical event where everyone's asked to wear black bottom and a white top. And, you know, Phil Stevens shows up in a pink shirt and, you know, sunglasses and a hat. And the idea here is that that is a type of voluntary activity what we're, you know, requiring students to wear for a certain type of event. I think the other piece is, and I'm going to go on the elementary side of this, is that, you know, send 50 kindergarten students on and Brianna will chuckle about this, but send 50 kindergarten students on a field trip. And when they're all wearing their yellow center school t-shirt, we can see them. And that's, you know, one of our requirements to do that. It just makes it that much more secure for us to be able to monitor students at an off-site location. So I think that's what they're getting at in this situation is there's
That's the intent. That's the
Say that again.
Section.
Say that again, sorry.
That's the intent of that particular section, and it, as you stated, it, you know, for the band or for the center school students who are on a trip. Or
Yes.
Okay.
Mary Kay, am I interpreting that correctly?
Yeah, you are. I mean, you know, when Jason or Tracy, as I mentioned, if they're having a concert, they may say to their students, you need to wear a white shirt and a black bottom. You know, that way that we have a uniformity within the ensemble. You know, field trips, there may be a specific dress code depending upon, I mean, we haven't been on a field trip in 3 years, but depending upon where we're going, if we're going to the opera, for example, there may be a specific way the teacher is requiring you to dress so that you can be a patron of that event without looking like, you know, without standing out, you know, that you would be kind of adhering to the norms that are placed on you by the venue. If you're going, for example, if you're going on a field trip to a machine shop, your teacher may say you cannot wear any open-toed shoes because that's a danger. You know, it kind of all depends on the situation. And that's why it's a little bit nebulous, because it's up to the conformity of that dress that's established for that specific event.
So this is approved by the student committee.
Yeah. So the
You-
process that we did, as they said, we had met for probably since late September, early October. And we came at lunchtime. So we had a running list of the things that they wanted to include, the things that they wanted to perhaps get rid of, and the things that they felt were not possible given what we have in our stores. And then we met, we talked about it. The draft was sent out to everybody. The student committee, as it stands, met to talk about it and approved it. Obviously, this hasn't gone out to the student body yet because we haven't brought it to you guys.
Thank you.
Good.
So Phil, this first read, right?
Yeah, Brianna, did you have something else you were going to add?
No, I wanted to make sure to thank the group for considering people of many different makes and models. So thank you for that. That's really, really important. And I think this policy helps show inclusion, acceptance, and appreciation for different sorts of people in many different ways in our community. And that's really important. I was thinking about what our fearless principal was saying about how sometimes there are specific things that you need to wear, right? And some people might object to that. However, when I think about our students growing up and becoming adults in the workplace or in other parts of their lives, there sometimes are specific requirements. For example, when I attend a Board of Education meeting, I'm making sure I'm not wearing my ripped up Yukon hoodie that has, ice cream stains on the front. So if you ever come across that, students, try to keep that in mind. You're preparing yourselves and your classmates for those kinds of things going into adulthood. So try to keep that in mind if anyone challenges you on that.
So if you, MK, if you can have them gather again, and thanks to all the folks, the students that are on the call, I appreciate your feedback. You're going to consider number 7. And I know that she's let you know that, so you have made a policy recommendation to the Board of Ed. Basically, the next process would be, we'll wait for your revision to come back. The policy committee can see your revision that you have. And then when they're ready, they'll make a recommendation to the full Board of Education for review, where they have the final say and they would vote on the implementation of the policy. So once you get your rewrite, you can share that back. The other thing I'm going to tell you is part of the policy that I have not done yet is, because I thought it was important that this committee see your work first, and it's actually, I think it's pretty impressive, is that this will also go to the Board of Education attorney, because I want to make sure that what you have written in here, even though it's in another, might be from another policy from another town, we want to make sure everything in here is legal and that we are meeting, the legal requirements, that, we're not leaving, discriminating. There might be a statement and there's something that our attorney will review it as well as you guys going back to make your adjustments. Okay.
And I would just like to add, Phil, I'm really proud of the work that these students have done. I mean, the students who spoke this evening have prepared to do that, but there were many students who were present and part of the conversation. And I fully appreciate the input of kids and the fact that they were so thoughtful about their choices. I mean, you'll see that there's nothing egregious or outstanding or crazy in this dress code policy, and they approached the task with seriousness and with a purpose, which I found to be very refreshing.
All right. Any other final comments, or can we move on? Oh, go ahead, Anna.
Would it be helpful for the other board members to hear the students make their presentation, or would you prefer not to have them do that?
No, I think once you're ready to recommend it, I absolutely think they should present this policy, because I mean, the idea here is that, this is typically we'd get draft language from other districts. I mean, the practice that they've gone through is exactly what I would go through. They looked at other policies, they compared. The piece they're missing right now is the attorney piece, which we're going to include in. But I think they should be presenting this to the full board, and they could use that same presentation to help the full board understand why we're doing what we're doing and what they're recommending.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks all. Go do your homework. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Leadership Committee.
Thank you.
Okay, so moving along. Thanks, MK. You don't need to stay with us either. So
Okay,
enjoy
have a
your
great
night.
night, everybody. Thank you for your
Thanks, you
time.
too. So I wanted to, I went back through and Brenda and I were talking in the beginning of COVID when we were, I don't have any more hair to lose, but I might have lost some more at that time. We had already approved several policies in June, I think it was, of 2019. This was one of them, and we reviewed it last time and went through it. And what I found was I had gone back and there was a couple edits from the attorney that you didn't get to see. So what I wanted to do is, this should take 2 seconds. I made the adjustments in yellow, and they're really, really simple, and they're still recommendations from the attorney. Number 1, the 5,000 series is for students. Well, this is not a for students policy. This is for staff reporting. So the 4,000 series is for staff reporting. So this would move this policy into the proper series, into the 4,000s. Okay. So that was change number 1. Change number 2 was this statement here In yellow, a mandated report or suspicions may be based on factors including, but not limited to, observations, allegations, facts by a child, victim, or third party. Suspicion or belief does not require certainty or probable cause. And that addition, I think, is important for families, because I think what happens is people think it's our obligation to investigate. We only investigate if it's a staff member. If there's something that is something we need to report, it is not our job to investigate. And matter of fact, DCF doesn't like that at all. So it's their job to investigate, to determine. So that statement was added in there. This was to the, basically that saying that we have to do a written report to the commissioner of DCF. That's always been the case. It's just that they added that one line in there. And then down the bottom, we took out, this was repetitive now, because it was basically saying that an agent of mine, meaning anybody that works under the superintendent, has to report it to the commissioner. It's now written up top. And then we added in this heading, personnel related investigations. So it separates it out, and it's about, you know, the investigation of personnel. And then instead of down here, instead of saying may, we said shall. And the online mandated reporter training is something that we participate in. New staff members do it. I think it's every 2 years that they have to do it. It might be 3, whatever it is. I know it in our, what we have in our writing. We actually often do it every year. We do general training, but then the online mandated reporter is built into our beginning of the year process. So this documentation shall be maintained that all employees have in fact received that policy and that they've done the training. We do that out of my office. Brenda keeps track of that, and that's for several policies. And then we just updated all of the, and this is straight from the attorney, to be honest with you, all of the statutes that are impacted and should be underneath. So I don't think there's a significant change in this, but I wanted to make sure this is what I would recommend you send to the full board for approval. Did you have any questions about anything that was in the yellow? And I know you just got this afternoon. Sorry, I was sick, and then the attorney was sick, so we've been going back and forth trying to get this stuff done. I saw Brianna shake her head. Ann or Herb, do you have any concerns with anything in yellow? Everything else is what you approved last time.
Not at this time, Phil. I'll read it through though.
Okay.
Just one little clarification, the legal references, all the red replaces the black with the current legal
Correct.
statutes and all. Okay,
Correct.
very good. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, it was easier just to copy and paste it from her list. So are you okay moving this full policy then to the board next week? And then if you, once you read this again, if you have any changes, you know, you can make this suggestion that night.
Yeah, I'm sure it's okay.
Okay. Brianna, you're all right with it? And I see your thumbs up. Perfect. Okay. And then the last policy of the night, this was approved in the same time, June or July of 2019. And this is an only up for review. I don't have, and neither does the attorney, have any revision. But when you write a policy as important in this one, and sometimes you'll see something like this, it'll just say reviewed. My suggestion is, and I know you just got this one today, so we don't need to have a lengthy conversation about this tonight, but I wanted to share with you why there's no yellow, why there's no crossouts, that we're just reviewing it. It's been 3 years, and this is a really important policy just from a legal standpoint. And the board attorney has already approved everything in here. She said it looks good, but it would just be that we would be adding a line down here, and this wouldn't even go to the full board. It would just say policy reviewed, the you know, and we would probably do this right May, because that's by the time you see, you know, have a chance to finalize. If you would say May 2022. If you want to make any changes, that would go to the full board. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So the only thing that I noticed, and this is just a typo thing, is the page numbering is within the text, but not a big deal.
We had some formatting problems
Yeah,
with this
yeah.
when we were fighting it. Yeah, we'll make sure with the formatting that the page numbers, that it
Yeah.
shifts down when it goes onto the website. Sometimes it's when we pull it into a PDF, it does that.
Mhm.
So why don't we then, I think our next meeting is set for April 11th, right? Next Monday. And what I'll do is I'll stay in touch, obviously, with MK. If we have any dress code update, we can add it to that list. If you have any, I'll put this policy back on again. So if you have any feedback on this policy, if you don't see anything that you want to change, we are just going to write reviewed. Okay?
Okay.
Restraints, dress code. And then I need to, the one policy I have not connected with the board attorney on yet is the minutes in recording, because there's definitely new sections we need to add into that. I have not done that yet. Once I get that policy, that will be, I'll send that out to you, and I'm going to try and do it in advance so you actually have some time to review it before the meeting, because it's not helpful otherwise to me. I'll get it out to you ahead of time. What's that, Herb?
Next meeting.
Yeah, and I'm gonna try and she and I talked today, or she talked to Brenda today. We were going back and forth in meetings. If I can get this policy out to you by the end of the week, that's kind of my goal at this point in time. Is that and really honestly, if I can get it to you by Wednesday, it'd be best. But if I give it to you by Friday, does that give you enough time to review it for a Monday meeting at 7 p.m.? It's not going to be a 30-page policy like the other ones.
Yeah.
So, Herb, you okay with that?
Yeah, as long as my print is working, you know.
Mhm.
And we can print them here if you want to zip over. We can definitely print them for you. Okay, so I'm just making a note by Friday. Okay. So again, next week, April 11th, 7 p.m. We'll have a review of if there's any update on dress code, it'll be on the agenda. If you have any feedback on the restraint policy, and then we will get into the minutes in recording of the meeting minutes in recording conversation, and I'll have a draft policy for you for that one.
So are we presenting the student sexual discrimination and harassment this next whole meeting?
I think, is that one you approved?
I believe so. I think we talked about that last week.
I'll go back and look, and I honestly, I literally have a stack of policies on my desk.
And then the other one that we talked about, and I don't know if the whole board has voted on this yet or not, is our unexpended education
That is going to be
funds.
on.
Okay.
That's going to be on the full board on at the next meeting. And the Board of Finance has not responded back, as I think based upon our conversations through the Board of Finance meetings, that they've basically said they accept, they know what the statute says. They have the right to, say at the end of the year, you can transfer money in or not, but they understand that it's the Board of Education's money at that point to expend what's in that account, and that the full board would vote on it.
And basically you just made them aware that we're talking about it. You didn't really
Right.
expect a response.
Well, I offered if they wanted me to hear, but based upon the conversations during their meetings, because it did come up, that they understand that and they were okay with it. So if they ask me, obviously I'll go, but I hope it was that my letter was clear to them and they understand what was happening. So, all right, so I'll check on the harassment policy, and we have a meeting tomorrow too. So I'll see you tomorrow for ed specs.
Can I ask a question about the finance board? Where are we now, and what is the next meeting? Do you want to finish this meeting and then I'll ask, or?
Yeah,
Okay.
let's, so it's 7:59, we'll adjourn. I'm just gonna stop the recording.